Hi, everyone. My name is Christine, and I want to share with you tonight a story called Daniel in the Lion's Den. It's about a young man who stood for righteousness and honor and worshiped God, even though he lived in a world that rejected God and despised him. He did not move from his morals, but he stayed the course, and God was with him. So, Daniel is the story I'm going to tell you, and about how he ended up in a lion's den. Okay, so the story dates back to a time when Darius, the king of Babylon, had great concern for his people and his country. He wanted everyone to be happy. So he decided he would appoint 120 supervisors and governors who would take care of his people. But who would choose this 120? He needed someone that was honest and a good person. And so this is where Daniel comes in. And it said that there was a man named Daniel who lived in the country of Darius. Daniel was a very religious man who believed in God. Daniel loved God, and every day Daniel would pray to him. In fact, Daniel prayed 3 times a day to God. He didn't miss a single day of prayer. And whatever happened to him, he always prayed and believed that God was with him and that God loved him. So the king heard about Daniel, and he picked Daniel and chose Daniel out of all the people to be one of those supervisors and governors. And so the two people that were working with Daniel began to not like him, and they didn't like that a common man worked with them. But Daniel did his work every day with great honesty and passion. And the king was very pleased with Daniel. So he gave Daniel the responsibility of taking over the whole kingdom. And so people began to get jealous of Daniel because he got to work so closely with the king. They decided they wanted to get rid of Daniel. And so they began to try to find ways to trick him and to get him in trouble with the king. And it said every single person tried their best to find faults and flaws within Daniel, but they couldn't find any fault in him because everything he did in honesty and in truth. He had morals, he honored God, he honored the king. And so that's when other people came against him and conspired to lie about Daniel. And they began to plot a way to capture Daniel in a lie or in a bad position and make him look bad in front of the king. But the king liked Daniel. So they had to do something like trickery. And so all the supervisors and governors went to King Darius and they said to the king, "Hail, King Darius. King Darius, we want to announce something in this country which is very good. It's beneficial for us." And so King Darius said, "So tell me, what do you want to announce? Tell me in detail. Explain to me what it is," the king said. And so the officials all said to the king, "King, all the supervisors, governors, lieutenants in this country want no one to pray to God, just you, for the next 30 days. We request that you would make such a declaration in all the land so all the people know that in the next 30 days they can pray to no one but you. And if they pray to anyone but you, they'll be put in the lion's den." The king listened to everyone, and the king decided that he would do what they suggested. And he signed a document declaring it becoming a law that no one could pray to God. Everyone had to pray to King Darius for 30 days. And so the law went throughout the country. And they did this because they knew every day. Remember, Daniel prayed 3 times a day. But Daniel was a good guy, he was a righteous guy. but they did it in a plot because they knew he would only pray to God because he believed in God as his strength, his source, and he loved God. And so it says that they went to the king with this request because they knew Daniel wouldn't do it. And so Daniel would be thrown into the lion's den and he would be killed. And then they would get rid of him. And so it says that after this became law, the news of it reached Daniel. And he was wondering why the king made such a law. And he said, who can live without praying to God? Everyone has a right to pray to God, but without worrying about the punishment of being thrown into the lion's den. Daniel got up the next day to pray to God like he had done before, and he continued to pray to God. And so everyone saw Daniel praying and was afraid that he was going to be thrown into the lion's den. And it said, even though there was a decree that he couldn't pray for 30 days, he defied the king's order and prayed to God. And it says that the other supervisors and governors were beginning to rejoice that their idea was working and that Daniel was going to be in serious trouble. And so they took advantage of the opportunity they saw. And they went to the king and they said, King Darius, you made the rule that nobody could pray to God and they could only pray for you for the next 30 days. But someone has broken this rule, and that person is Daniel. And if now, according to the rule, he has to be thrown into the lion's den. Upon hearing this, the king was very upset, and he knew that someone had tricked him and to get him to put Daniel into the lion's den. But he had ordered a decree, so he had to follow his decree. Even though he loved Daniel, he honored Daniel, he liked Daniel because he made that law. He had to honor it, and Daniel was going to be thrown in the lion's den. So the king began to worry and fret, and he worried about Daniel all through the night. And he thought about how he could save Daniel from such punishment. But he could not see any way to save Daniel because he had made this law. And so the king and the supervisors came and they said, you have to put Daniel in the lion's den. You made a decree. You made a law. And so you have to follow it. So even though he didn't want to put Daniel in the lion's den, he had to because it was his own law. So it says that he gave the order and the soldiers went and got Daniel and put Daniel in the lion's den. And there were many fierce, dreaded lions in that den. Many people had gone into the lion's den before and died. And so the king was worried that Daniel would die. But after he was put inside the mouth of a cave, it was covered with a large stone so that Daniel couldn't get out. He couldn't escape. And so a royal seal was applied to the stone so no one could open the sealed cave. No one could move the stone. It was royal decree. But after putting Daniel in the lion's den, the king was very worried about Daniel. He was sad that he had ever made that law, but he had anxiety and he couldn't sleep. He worried about Daniel in the lion's den. And the next day, the king ran to the lion's den to see if Daniel was alive or dead because he knew Daniel had prayed to his God to save him. And it said the king stood outside and started shouting, Daniel, Daniel, are you alive? Can you hear me? Are you alive? Let me know. And Daniel replied, Hail, King Darius, I am alive, my king. And he said that the angels of God came to him in the night and they stopped the lion so the lion would not attack him. And it said that God saved his soul because he was innocent. And it said that those people had put him in a trap and that he had not done anything contrary, but that everything he did was honest and true before God. So Daniel prayed to God to keep him safe. And God gave the lions peace. And they didn't attack Daniel. They didn't eat Daniel like they had done so many people before. And so Daniel was still alive, even though he had been in this cave trapped with these lions. And it said that Daniel told the king that he was still alive. And the king was so happy he was alive. And he immediately ordered the soldiers to take Daniel out of that cave. And when the king saw him, there wasn't even one scratch on him, not even like a claw mark, not a bite. He was untouched. And then the king sentenced the man and all those people who tried to trap Daniel in a lie. And he ordered them to put in the lion's den. And it said that the lions tore them to shreds. The lions ate these evil men. But after Daniel came out of the den, the king issued a new decree, a new law. Then all the country, whether it be man or woman or child or old person, that they had the right to pray to God. That because Daniel's God spared him from the death of the lions, that he must be the one true God. So he made a decree and announced throughout all the land that everyone could pray to God, and that Daniel's God was the one true God. And so I hope you enjoyed this story. It's from the Bible, and it's one of the great stories that a lot of kids love because they're just amazed at how God protected Daniel, and that how Daniel's faith in God and Daniel's assurance in God saw him through this difficult time. And even when we go through difficult times, we can pray and ask God to help us, knowing that he hears our cries and that he wants to help us, that he's a good God, he's a loving God. He's not a God that's going to beat you, who's going to punish you, who wants to kill you. He's a God that wants to save you. He's a God that wants to love you. And so we'll be talking about more about who God is in just a little bit, and about being children of God. I'm so excited to share with you tonight. I'm so excited you're here. There's people that have been praying, and that, we've been praying to God, and we're so excited to have you here tonight to join us and to feed you, and that you're having a great time singing and playing games. We're going to have an awesome night, and I look forward to talking to you soon.